All right, we're two after, so everyone else can kind of join in flight. Thank you so much for joining. For those of you who don't know me, because we got some returning folks, my name is Chris Yule. I'm the VP of Sales and Strategy for CyberSecOp, and I really appreciate you guys joining this particular topic. It's one of our educational webinars in the series we've been running on backups and why they become more important. I'm going to introduce our main speaker, Stephen, in a minute, but I wanted to kind of run through and show you the quick agenda. We're going to keep this to a tight 30-minute overall conversation. So, Stephen, if you could advance that for me. So we're going to keep it to a tight conversation, and there'll be room for you to ask any questions that you'd like inside of the chat box, and we'll address as many of those as we can. On the next slide, you'll see why we're bringing this topic to the forefront. CyberSecOp, as you know, is a consulting company in cybersecurity. Stephen, go to the next slide.
Oh, sure, sorry.
One of the things that we really think is important is the ability to sit down and both protect yourself from an attack as well as recover. And this particular topic is on the recovery side, obviously, to sit down and actually make sure that if in fact there is a breach or there is an outage, whether that be minimal or catastrophic in its impact, the ability to sit down and recover is one of the key elements that we know is important and know is a viable option. And if you look at on the next slide, it really shows how things have moved just over the last 2 years. And I know 2 years seems like a long time for many of us. We're kind of beyond using the word of internet time. But 2 years ago, things were different in the cyber world. For one, there was a quest by every threat actor to sit down and actually get to your PII data and be able to sell it in the dark web, in the open market. And what's changed from 2 years ago to now is that time to get to that pot of gold was around 93 days. We know that because we actually have an incident response team. We can also validate that through FBI data and other data that's out there. But what's happened is the data itself, there's so much of it out there, it's worth pennies on the dollar. So the goal right now is to sit down and actually prevent you, from a threat actor's perspective, prevent you from conducting business. And if you ask any business owner, whether they're small or Fortune 500, they know how much a minute, an hour, a day costs to be down. So that ability to sit down and actually prevent that from happening or to be able to recover quickly is why we've brought this to the forefront. And we've actually had many of our clients and those attending the webinars asked to move this forward. This was actually lower down in the stack. And that 277 days can be attributed to two things. One, it can be attributed to the fact that everyone's gotten smarter on our side, right? We've all deployed endpoint protection. We're doing security awareness training. So we've made it more difficult to get there. But there is a real difference between weaving your way as a threat actor into the pot of gold and taking that piece of data rather than shutting the organization down. So that's one of the big reasons why we think this is so relatively important to the market. On the next slide, what is kind of a point, and we see this throughout the industry, and you're seeing this at the small, medium, large, extra large organizations, it's rethinking a lot of the balance of those investments, as stated here by a Gartner analyst, on your people, process, technologies, the things that you've done to sit down and protect yourself, and also a little bit of what some being slightly more pessimistic would be belt and suspender kind of work. So even in this dialogue that we're going to have, and Stephen will lead you through it, we have organizations that have that we've earned through Sunday morning calls where they've been breached, had no backups, or they had a backup that wasn't encrypted, or they had a backup that was encrypted, that somehow they basically locked down everything and erased everything as opposed to being able to get to it and didn't have secondary or tertiary copies. So this is an opportunity to kind of see how does the concept of actually having a really immutable backup or an air gap backup or a secondary or tertiary backup help you in the long run. Stephen, just go to the next slide. So I think the biggest point that why this has moved forward in our mind, but also in the customer's minds, if you kind of look at the way the cyber insurance industry is looking, they look at things very much as an actuary, which shouldn't surprise any of us. And it's completely black and white. No emotion, very clinical. And if you look at the way that they are providing cyber insurance now, if you've never had it before, or when you're coming back for a renewal, that bottom left-hand corner is really what they want to see. They want to make sure that you've got multi-factor turn on everything. They want to make sure now that you've got weekly backups done and I wouldn't say mandatory, but highly preferred to be segregated, encrypted, and offline. And also, if you see the bottom one there, it's also patching every 14 days. We've had several conversations on all those, but the fact that they're looking at offline, segregated, air-gapped, encrypted, like you're kind of seeing the pattern of it's got to be there, it's got to be there. And while they might give you insurance, if you don't have this total string of that, the premiums and the premiums are high and the deductibles are even higher. So it starts making insurance kind of a confusing decision from an investment perspective. Stephen, on the last slide there. So, this whole concept of best offense is a good defense, or reverse it, good defense is a great offense. It really is to the core of where cybersecop, and I think any organization that truly comes in and tries to provide the best guidance to an organization on where they are and where they should be, is making sure that it is as difficult as possible to get in and as easy as possible to recover. And one of the things that we hope, when even in our we have programs that are proactive incident response programs to perform these kinds of assessments, paying the ransom should be the last choice. The first choice is not let it happen. The second choice is be able to recover quickly. The final choice, if you have no other option, is to pay the ransom. And we hope that during this conversation, we'll help you understand what some of those options are to prevent that last step from happening. So I think on the next slide, Stephen, is really just an introduction into you. Stephen is one of our valued partners through UBX Cloud. They are an amazing organization. I'll let Stephen give you a little bit about himself, but also kind of walk you through why we believe and why our customers are asking to hear more about this whole concept of the importance of backups. Stephen?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christopher. This is absolutely near and dear to me, and not just my profession, but personally, I've had a lifelong passion for data centers, all things cloud, all things server infrastructure, and kind of anything in between. I built a company that started out in the mid to late 90s, and the goal of that company was to protect and create, a secure environment in which people can conduct their business and can run their applications. And we always, like myself and our core team, has always been fond of being that back end team that no one sees and keeps the lights on at night, takes care of everything. I turned that passion into a business, and it's been growing very strongly. And we've met some incredible people, smart people all over the world. And about maybe 8 years ago, my expertise in server management and our team's expertise, we got thrusted into the cybersecurity with the very first Kaseya ransomware breach. And all of a sudden, our customers were demanding a lot more from us as a cloud provider. And I involved myself begrudgingly into the security aspect of things, but it turns out that it's become even more important these days. So I'm here today to really just talk about the first line of defense here, and that really is backups, and that's something that as an IT professional and someone who's been managing this, back from the 90s where tapes were cool, they're kind of cool again, but to even now being prepared for this and kind of conveying some of that knowledge is really my goal. So I welcome all of you today to this presentation. As Chris alluded to, the insurance company, at least in the United States, is kind of driving where the direction of data protection is going from an organizational standpoint. Now, it's interesting to observe this because as a decision maker in a business, you're usually in most organizations, you're going to be looking at your team's internal advice, you're going to be looking at your managers and asking them feedback on like what you can do better as a company. And a lot of times, because information technology is not a profit center for companies, they're often, either just kind of glazed over or, just kind of ignored on some of the things that they're demanding. And in my experiences, when the insurance company starts getting involved and they start advocating and saying the same things that the IT department or the information security department, depending on your size, comes out to, then people start to listen. And those requirements, as the threats are evolving, are becoming deeper and deeper. And I'm happy to see that decision makers, industries, and verticals that normally wouldn't really involve themselves too deeply into these topics are becoming more top of mind and more aware of it because of this, because of the external asks from their vendors. So, you know, in these just normal strategies, it's really important to make sure that you really have a sound backup plan, and that kind of starts with just knowing what you have, so that you know what to protect. And the new requirement from the insurance carriers, as Chris mentioned, is that segregated backup piece. So that's where us as IT professionals and cloud providers, we need to make sure that we are designing these environments so that the bad guys can't get to it. So that even if something happens in your environment, that the bad guys can't get to it. So engineering and creating these things around these requirements can be tough, but they're also a part of the journey here. As these criminals become more opportunistic and more daring, we have to get more inventive and more creative, and part of that is tertiary backups and segregated backups. Having your data offsite is probably the simplest, easiest, and most cost-effective way to ensure that nothing else happens in that chain of security events. And I'll go through that kind of just a moment. But the solution that we kind of came up with here is to meet this requirement was the offsite backup repositories being that first level of defense, but also that tertiary backup repository in which the data is actually offline. This is usually accomplished in our industry using tape backups or worm media in which the data can be written and then never altered or changed. And that's insurance just in case, that the data gets into the wrong hands. They can't destroy it, encrypt it, extort it, whatnot. So we created a mechanism in which we can airback those tertiary backups and kind of do regular role-based access control and limit privileges into that area to only the principle of least privilege, and observe that and make sure that no one can get to it, and that these systems are offline, and that they're only brought online for the backup window. And then once the backup window is complete, they're completely disconnected off the internet. And one of the more important ones that us jointly as a cloud services provider have decided on at UBX was check the backup chains and make sure they're separate backup chains than the ones that are actually relied upon at the first offsite backup. So what that basically means is that if your first copy of your backups, if there's something wrong with that chain, which happens, and you go to take your second copy of your offsite copy, it's a copy of the same chain, so you're going to have the same missing data at both locations. So having the ability to have a third copy that's completely offline and separate than that possible corrupt chain or missing file from that chain is really helpful. So these are things that we kind of baked into the product, and as the threats evolve, we're also kind of evolving our offensive structure against it. This is just a diagram that just represents what the new normal for backup is for us. So segregating backups, as I mentioned, and keeping that offsite copy, this is pretty this is pretty straightforward in the sense that keeping that copy isolated from production is extremely important. A lot of people overlook this. I've been involved myself personally and my company in lots of cyber remediation instances in which our expertise is used to recover and restore and rebuild environments that have been decimated by ransomware or threat actors. So the way that these groups work is that they're highly trained and highly specialized in very specific areas. So imagine they're taking the IT professionals in the various disciplines within IT and weaponizing that knowledge and turning that into a criminal organization. When they send their reconnaissance people into the environment, they paint targets on the backup systems. And if that backup system is on your premises or at your site or inside your local network, and your local network gets compromised, Susie in accounting opens up an email attachment that she probably shouldn't have, or a thumb drive or some data was accessed that probably shouldn't have been. That will spread out like fire, and that will invite the threat actors in. And a lot with their automation and tools, they will find those backups. They'll paint their target so that when the next team comes in, they know what to destroy and what to do. And a lot of times, the very first step in that process is to destroy the on-site backups and then erase the off-site backups. So as a cloud services provider, we have mechanisms in place to protect that second copy. And then now with the new normal, I mentioned that third copy as well. And a part of our offering, and a lot of others that offer in the similar space, and what differentiates, I would say, UBX from others, is that we're not just providing you data to like put your backups in, but we're actually experts in this technology, at Veeam in particular. So we're subject matter experts in the software, we're in recovery and restoration and remediation. And I think that's really important because when it comes to actually recovering the data and putting it back into the environment, you really want to have that second pair of hands that can help you and understands what you're backing up and what the value of that data is and what the value of your downtime is. So having that partner lockstep with you, making sure that your backup chains are healthy, making sure that the data that needs to be making it to the offsite environment is there, I think is really important, because if you're in the life cycle of a cybersecurity incident, just to give you a little bit of context, it always follows the same path, and or I should say pathology, because it's always like patient zero is going to be the point of compromise, and then everything after is going to be geared towards extorting you for money or data, or destroying your company with whatever means possible. In the United States, the insurance companies are usually the first parties to get involved or breach counsel, depending on your company size. And they will speak with the threat actor, they'll negotiate on your behalf, and they will keep the conversation going with the threat actors while their incident response team, which is like the leaders of the IT professionals in the background, that are going to go in and assess the damage and the information. So if you can imagine, like, they're the CSI team that goes in there and investigates everything, and they tell you exactly how they got in, how to stop them from getting back in, and what holes and what things that needs a plug. So then the rest of the IT disciplines can kind of go in there and do their thing. And their role is really important, and that time that's being bought by the negotiator is really beneficial. And the next steps in the process are going to be the remediation team or the restoration team, and that's exactly what we do. As a part of our job as a cloud services provider, we are moving those workloads from one end to another. And we're very familiar with rebuilding and restoring any kind of Microsoft technology or any kind of enterprise environment. So while we're rebuilding or restoring, the other disciplines are doing their thing. And then the PR people are talking on behalf of the customer. And actually, I should have moved to this one, sorry. The PR people are talking on behalf of the customer, and they're kind of, everyone's doing their own task and kind of minimizing the impact of the business. But really, having the backups in place is that first line of defense. Like, if you go into step one, you may not even need to negotiate if you know that you have a good copy of your backups. And then let us and let the other professionals in this space do their thing by ensuring that those backups are safe to recover from, and that there's no like bad guys in the room with you once we bring the servers back, and that it's a safe place to go into.
And Stephen, let me add to that. So our forensics and incident response team has done just that in several of the most recent situations that we've worked on for clients. Not clients that came in breached, not clients that we haven't had, knock on wood, any client have an attack, a successful attack so far. But in two of the recent cases, we have sat down and kind of dragged the process out during the negotiation to allow the recovery process to complete itself. In one case, they needed an extra 4 days. Another one, it was an extra 7 days. So we kind of mimic the whole process. Yes, we're going to do it, gives a little bit of data, but it was really to allow the backups to recover. And those were not leveraging these kinds of technologies that Stephen's really presenting, but still they had copies. We had one that in recent time, they actually had to pay the ransom because they did have backups and they were encrypted, but the administration rights weren't protected. Then the threat actor came in and just basically deleted all the backups. So the fact that there was nothing left to recover from was the only way to sit down and actually get it, because they had basically taken those away and there was no option at that point. So it really, we even go through the process through tabletop exercises to figure out exactly, both discovery and kind of workshopping. Where are you? What do you need? What makes the most logical sense? Is it something like more backup or an encrypted version or an air gap version, or is it something else? Is it at the front end of defense? So again, this is a tool when you sit down and look at that readiness to be protect and readiness to recover concept. But I think this is, as we've been going through, I think it's an important element.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like I like that you mentioned that, in the sense that the aspect of having to go through that negotiation and pay that Bitcoin, because you might come to a situation where you don't have a full option for recovery, and unfortunately, some of the smaller companies, they can't afford the ransom, and and maybe they can negotiate a better rate, or maybe the threat actor. So a lot of times they'll do their own diligence and they'll know exactly what your insurance policy limits are or exactly what your company can afford to pay on the Bitcoin side. So the negotiation piece, either with breach counsel or a negotiator who specializes in this, is important. Um, and as a part of like where I see it is like I'm like, okay, I wish that we had this conversation with the customer, and I wish that they were using services from us or like us to be able to even not need any of the rest of the stuff to happen. No business downtime, no reputation damage, no tangible loss in business or business extinction events. And uh, you know, when your house is on fire and you have nowhere to go, it's a really sad state of affairs. So our company and our team is incredibly specialized, and then at UVX we have these services, and they all kind of work well together. Um, on the managed cloud side, we're building infrastructure, and we're putting all your servers in our environment or a multi-cloud environment in which we're managing it holistically. We're offering managed backup in DR, leveraging Beam Technologies, and we're a platinum partner with them and have developed products with them. And we have both backups and disaster recovery. So there was a different use case for both, and both. I like having both in place really is going to help minimize downtime and interruption to your business. And on the cloud workspaces, they're floating desktops that people can connect to and run their business apps. And that's good too, because they're being presented with a remote screen and they're working just as they would at their desk. And they don't have to concern themselves with, their local systems infecting anything on the servers because they're just being painted a picture. And we've been doing this before it was cool, before COVID. So like I call us like the OG of Citrix workspaces, because we were doing it in 2008 when like only a very select group of people needed them. And now, post pandemic, it's like everyone needs it and everyone wants it. So that's like the trifecta. And because we're just offering these services, we can really hyper focus on them. And like I said, mine is the business continuity piece, and where I feel like the most impact is on being able to recover from these situations. Um, there are mechanisms that we include in our offering that makes the restore process easier. We allow things like restore to door, where we actually, in some situations, we ship the data to the customer. We have our cloud repositories inside of data centers, and we can seed the data and send that to the customer, and then help them do the restores if the internet connection isn't able to pull the data down. We use technology like WAN accelerators to improve the recovery speed. And in almost all of these situations, we've actually restored our customers' backups into a cloud that we built for them. And a lot of times that gets the restore even faster than it would be going back on site. We recently had a situation like this where the customer had to wait 7 days to get their data back into their environment because of just the size and the links to all the branch locations. So what we did in parallel is that we just built that environment that mimicked those sites, and then we restored the data inside of them. And to have the various IT disciplines being able to do all that and do all that rapidly is pretty unique. And that's something that we do very well, because we know when your house is on fire, we want our house to be a safe place for you. Um, Part of the enterprise infrastructure that we run is a commercial off-the-shelf product from Pure Storage and Cisco. It's a joint venture between both those companies. And we've been working very closely with them for a long time. And we're actually the first flash stack cloud provider. Normally, this is reserved for like very large enterprise companies because of the high ticket cost. And we're using that infrastructure and carving it up so that it's an affordable option for customers who want to consume it with a cloud service. We pretty much manage every aspect of the infrastructure and the network, and we co-manage other aspects of the environment with our customers. So we typically work with IT departments, IT managers, CISOs, and awesome companies like CyberSecOps. Looks like we're getting a little close on time, so I'll just kind of jump over the case study, but don't worry, the deck will be sent to everyone in the recording, so that won't be an issue. The functional takeaways are understand, what is important to back up, understand the options and the solutions that are currently in place and test them. I just made a comment about the restore times being a week. That wasn't something that anyone really considered because they never had to restore to a branch site in South America that had a very low speed internet connection. So those are the things that need to be considered, because then as a true partner here, us or even your internal IT would say, okay, well, maybe we should just do a DR site. Maybe we should work with a cloud provider and get that set up. So that way we don't have to rely on certain aspects of the recovery process that would be impeded or slowed down by any kind of connectivity issue. Talk to your vendors, talk to your insurance providers, get an understanding of what they're sensing in the market, and just try to de-risk yourself as much as possible. As I mentioned, we'll be sending a copy of the recording, and I would love for anyone to kind of ask any questions here relating to anything that we've talked about. I'm making myself and my team available for any one-on-one discussions and deep dives. Like I mentioned, this is a very passionate topic for me, and I'd love to see and hear what others have experienced or want to safeguard their businesses with.
Stephen, there was one question that came up that, because we have a few and we'll answer those offline, but as far as kind of the discovery time model to sit down and kind of work with a customer to understand exactly what they have and then start getting into the recommendations, what does that look like in process or time, if you can share that?
Yeah, if they're working with us, we pretty much have like a template placed on the vertical. So if we get a manufacturing company from North America and they're this size, or they're using this line of business software or ERP system, we pretty much know what it's going to take to rebuild. We can get an approximate data. Because this is kind of all we do, we kind of know. And then the customer's input just kind of gives us a little bit of spice to add to the meal so that we get a more refined understanding. And then we have some options and some discovery tools that we can use that will help kind of even drive that even further.
Okay. And if you can take a second, for some reason we made that smaller than it should be. Bottom left there was a promo that we wanted to offer everybody that didn't register. So I don't want to miss that before we close.
Yes, the freebies. So unfortunately, I don't have like delicious cookies or anything to serve everyone. So I figured I'd do the next best thing. So UBX Cloud, in partnership with CyberSecOps, is providing a terabyte of offsite immutable storage with our Beam powered cloud offering. And we're offering an option for either 5 protected Microsoft 365 mailboxes or 2 protected servers or workstations. And that can be any server, any workstation, Windows, Mac, Linux, all kinds of flavors. We're limiting this to the first 25 requests or so that we get in. And there are some limitations, but I really feel at the very least, please take advantage of the free consulting and the free discussions that we're going to have, because I really don't want anyone in this audience to go through and see the things that I see through my eyes from a recovery standpoint. So much of this pain can be stopped before it's a problem.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, thank everybody. Stephen, thank you so much. I think it was really insightful. As Stephen said, we will send a recording out. You'll get the deck as well. We'll highlight the promo even larger than it is on that slide. And we are here to help you. So thank you so much for attending this. Hope you join us on the next one. The next one that's coming up in April, and there'll be others in May every 2 weeks, is the importance of an enterprise browser, which was asked for to be a return topic. We've already handled that one and we're bringing it back to the forefront. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Stephen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.